For our daily cancellation today, we must unfortunately turn back briefly to Zoran Mamdani, because the fact that a third world Muslim communist from Uganda is about to become the mayor of our most populous city really does matter. Last night, there was a big rally for Mamdani at a stadium in the city. AOC was one of the Ugandans' warm-up acts. And, it was not her best performance, I have to say.
Matt starts right out the gate swinging, calling Mamdani a third world Muslim communist from Uganda. That's not analysis. That's a loaded insult dressed up as a political critique. He sets the tone. This isn't about policy. It's about identity politics and fear-mongering. Then he mocks AOC's warm-up speech, saying she lists off racial groups like she's ticking boxes, but leaves out white people. That's Walsh's first rhetorical hook. Pretend inclusion is exclusion.
Jews escaping Holocaust, Black Americans fleeing slavery and Jim Crow, Latinos seeking a better life, Native people standing for themselves, Asian Americans coming together in Queens, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Manhattan, in Staten Island, in this country.
This is what counts as a stirring oratory on the left. All you gotta do is scream out a list of various ethnic and racial groups, making sure to list all of them except for white people. And this is a list that AOC jams into every speech she's ever given, and yet she still stumbles over it. So practice does not make perfect in her case, it turns out. But the main event was Mamdani himself. We've already discussed extensively the fact that Mamdani is a third world communist Islamist grifter con man who is only a viable candidate because half of the city wasn't born in this country and many of them can't even speak English. But now I want to focus on the actual policies that the Ugandan commie scammer is proposing. We're told by his supporters, the ones who can speak English anyway, that Mamdani is popular because of his policies. So what are these popular policies? Well, here he is outlining what he considers to be his top 3 proposals. Listen.
Here is what we stand for, my friends. We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line and make what are currently the slowest buses in the nation move around this city with ease. And we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents, so New Yorkers can raise their family in the city they love. Together, New York, we're going to freeze the... Together, New York, we're going to make buses fast and... Together, New York, we're going to deliver universal... We will make our city one where every person who calls it home can live a dignified life.
So Mamdani's big ideas are to freeze rent, meaning landlords will be legally prohibited from raising the rent, to make buses faster and free for everyone, and to make childcare free for everyone.
Let's be clear. You can debate whether these policies work, but Walsh skips that. He goes straight for ridicule. He uses sarcasm instead of substance, mocking it as Uganda witch doctor magic. That's not analysis. That's xenophobia disguised as economics. He's not arguing the numbers. He's arguing the person.
This is Mamdani's genius 3-step plan to make New York City affordable. The Ugandan has cracked the code. To make a city affordable, all you have to do is pass a series of laws requiring that it be affordable. Mamdani is going to take his magical wand, which he bought from a Ugandan witch doctor by trading 2 goats and a pineapple, wave it around, and make everything free and good and wonderful and faster. The buses will not only cost nothing somehow, they'll even be faster. So that's all it takes. This is crazy. I never knew. All it takes to make stuff affordable is for someone in government to go, hey, things have to be affordable now. Hey, all you better make things affordable. All you have to do is shout at the housing market and say, be affordable. And it will be. It's magic. Now, if you've been paying attention to the history of Western civilization over the past 200 years or so, you'll know that all of these proposals have been tried many times before, and they've all failed every time in every place they've ever been implemented. The only places that have even come close to achieving any sort of success with these ideas are small, homogenous, all-white European countries. But even there, it hasn't really worked out. And it certainly has never worked and can never work in a large, crowded, extremely racially and ethnically diverse population center. And that is all that should need to be said. But that would make this segment too short. So, I'll keep talking. So let's take each of these proposals one at a time. It shouldn't be necessary to explain the problem with freezing rent. Only someone who is, and I mean this in the medical sense, truly, but only someone who is mentally retarded could ever think that you can make housing affordable by telling landlords they can't raise the rent. If it were that easy, okay, the policy would be implemented everywhere, and we would be living in a utopia of 4-bedroom, spacious, pristine, $800 a month apartments. But no such utopia exists. And that's because there are many costs associated with being a landlord. And the freeze on rent does not freeze any of those costs. Okay, as a landlord, you have maintenance fees, legal fees, leasing fees, property management fees, gas, electric, trash collection, water, sewage, lawn care, repairs, plumbing, pest control, cleaning, not to mention property insurance, property taxes, potentially HOA fees. And that is just a partial list. Now, what happens when those costs continue to rise, even as rent is forced to stay the same? You end up with rental properties that owners can no longer maintain. You end up with foreclosures. You end up with no incentive to build or rent new properties. You end up with a drastic reduction in the housing supply, exactly what has happened every time these policies have been attempted elsewhere. So to review, by freezing rent, what you get is fewer rental properties available, and the ones that are available are in worse condition. So congrats. Now, what about making the bus free? Well, we've already talked about this actually at some length, leaving aside the fact that you're losing a lot of fare revenue, which means taxes will be raised to make up for the losses, which means the bus actually is not free, because nothing is free, nor can ever be free, as any moderately intelligent 7-year-old understands. But leaving that aside, all you'll accomplish, as has happened everywhere this has been implemented, is turning buses into roving homeless shelters.
This is classic Walsh. Take a small problem, blow it up into a moral collapse narrative. Instead of asking, how do we make public transit better? It's, look at these bums ruining civilization. The empathy gap is massive.
Because now the already meager barrier keeping the homeless from setting up camp on buses and proceeding to make the experience even more miserable, disgusting, dangerous, and not to mention pungent for everybody else will be lifted. So that's not going to benefit working New Yorkers who can afford the bus fare in the slightest. It is purely a benefit for homeless, unbathed, cracked out vagrants. As it happens, most of Mamdani's policies are tailored primarily to that demographic. Universal childcare is by far the worst of these disastrous ideas. And let's leave aside again the fact that it is catastrophically expensive. There is no such thing as free childcare. You know why? Because the child care providers are not slaves. You have to pay them. They cost money. And so it's not free and can never be free. I said before that nothing is free. There is one exception to that. Something can be free with slavery.
That's where the math flips. This isn't economics. This is fear rhetoric. He's using slavery as shock bait, not as logic. He's trying to emotionally hijack the audience into equating social welfare with moral collapse. And that's how he ends the segment, painting Mamdani's proposals as road to ruin. Drugged out homeless on buses, rotting apartments, anxious daycare kids. But let's be real. The irony, Walsh says if you vote for that, you'll deserve it. That's exactly what populists on the left say about corporate greed and rent gouging. Both sides yelling, you'll deserve it. Neither fixing anything.
Okay, so if you really want free stuff, then we got to talk about having slavery. That's the only way to do it. You want free stuff, you want to get things for free, you want free childcare, you want free this, you want free that. Well, the one way to do it is slavery. You could even have free buses, maybe, if the bus drivers are slaves and the buses are maintained by slaves, then you could have probably have free buses too. So that's the only way. So when you talk about you want stuff to be free, I can only assume that what you're making an argument for is to bring back slavery. But if you don't want slavery, then there is no such thing as free. So get that stupid word out of your stupid mouth and realize that someone has to pay for it, because we have to pay for the labor that goes into this. All you're doing is shifting the cost. And in this case, rather than having parents pay for their own child's care, you're forcing strangers, taxpayers, to pay for the care of other people's children. Those are the only two options when it comes to childcare. There is no third option aside from slavery. Either parents will pay for their child's care or strangers will. And call me crazy. Call me cruel. Call me a mean old guy who lacks compassion. But I tend to think that if anyone should pay for your child's care, it should be you. If you're sitting there thinking, who is going to pay for daycare for my child? You know my answer? You. Because the only other option is someone who is not you. And I think making someone who is not you pay for your child is wrong. Why? Because he's your child and not this other person's child. You see, that's why. You are first on the list of people who should be on the hook. Who should pay for your child's babysitter? You. Not Jim down the street. Not me. Not anyone else. So to me, that seems like the simplest and fairest, and also, by the way, by far the cheapest option. But even if we ignore that issue, which we really can't, experience has shown, including in Quebec when they implemented this 30 years ago, that universal childcare leads to a dramatic drop in the quality of care. Staffing shortages and low quality care are nearly guaranteed in this kind of system. This is inevitable because an increase in demand is also guaranteed. Because now that childcare is free, but not really free, more families will choose to drop their kids in daycare. I mean, that's the whole reason they do this. We get more kids in daycare. Well, but then we don't have enough staff to keep up with it, so there's staffing shortages, and then the quality of the care goes down. And all that is really bad news because multiple studies have also shown conclusively that children raised in daycare have noticeably worse outcomes than children raised in their own homes. The U.S. NICHD study of early child care and youth development, among other major long-term studies, have shown that children who are placed in full-time daycare before the age of 4 have higher rates of defiance, impulsivity, anxiety, aggression. This is exactly the result you would expect, and exactly the result you find. So the last thing we should do if we want a functional and healthy civilization is encourage more families to send toddlers into daycare and mothers into cubicles. There is no discernible benefit to society to that arrangement. It's all bad all the way down. So this is what Mamdani promises: less and worse housing, buses overrun by homeless, drugged out rapists, understaffed daycare centers where your child can go to become more anxious and more aggressive. That's what he's promising. And if you vote for that, you're going to get it. And you'll deserve it. And you will be, by your own choice, today.
So what are we left with? Matt Walsh doesn't just criticize Mamdani. He turns policy debate into cultural welfare. It's not about budget or feasibility. It's about mocking compassion and framing poverty as moral weakness. The problem isn't that he points out flaws. Some points are fair. It's that he buries them under layers of insults, class resentment, and cultural panic. Bottom line, Mamdani's ideas might be unrealistic, but Walsh's rant is pure performance. One's utopian, the other's dystopian. Neither one is serious policy. Thank you for watching and listening to our video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll talk with you on the next video.